Hello everyone, I'm Rebecca Keppel. In today's video, I am sharing my first time trying out a gel press. So I am no expert mixed media artist. I just thought it'd be really fun to try one out and see different mediums and different techniques that you could do with them to create backgrounds for cards. I'll be sure to share any tips and tricks that I learn along the way, and of course, I'll share the cards that I create. So let's jump right into opening up this gel press, getting it all set up, and getting started with some fun techniques. So this is the gel press that I decided to try. This is a 6x6 gel press. There is a smaller size and an 8x10 as well if you do larger projects that you're working on. I don't think I would need anything larger than 6x6. So it's a jelly, almost feels like a stamp in between two pieces of plastic that you peel off. I'm going to place mine on my glass mat to hold it in place while I work on it, and then I'm going to peel off that top protective piece of plastic and set it aside. I will keep it in those to keep it from getting, honestly, just dog hairs on it mostly. So the first thing that I'm going to try with it is the Catherine Pooler inks. And the first technique I tried was to just smear the ink pad right on to the gel press. Now, honestly, with the foam pads of these ink pads, it was kind of difficult to just smear them on the gel press. I mean, not impossible, but it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. I thought it would be a lot smoother, but I guess between the foam pad and the gel of the gel press, it was a little difficult to do. So what I decided was to use my brayer to try and smooth out the ink and kind of connect it together because I didn't want to get orange onto my yellow pad, so I left some space in between those two, and I figured I could use the brayer to smooth it out. So I have an 8.5 by 11 piece of white cardstock. You'll see later in the video I start cutting them down to 6x6. I just wanted to see if this would even work. And it really does. It comes out cute. The only thing is the dye ink kind of beads up on the gel press a little bit. So this time I decided to do an entire coverage of the yellow ink and then smear some of the green on my glass mat and try and pick it up with my brayer to put it over top because I feel like the yellow can go with the green or the orange. So using the brayer to transfer it from the glass mat to the gel press, I thought might get some more evenness to the coverage and have less of the beading occur. The cool thing you can do with gel press and ink is to use a stamp to make an impression on the ink that you've laid down. So instead of inking up the stamp, you use the stamp clean and then stamp it on the gel press. Then you have some ink on your stamp, which you can stamp off on a piece of cardstock if you'd like to use it for another project. And you have the ink removed from the gel press so that you can press your paper down and get the opposite image where the background is colored and the image of the butterfly is not colored in. And that is a pretty cool technique to be able to do. It's kind of not really like mirrored stamping, but you know what I mean. Like you get the reverse effect. So here we go. You can see that white butterfly where there's no ink on where the butterfly is. So now I thought, okay, well, let me try refills of the Catherine Pooler ink to see if that I could get more coverage that way or get more even coverage that way. But you can see again, the dye ink does kind of bead up a little bit on that gel press. It actually looks very cool. It's just a totally different look than what I was necessarily trying for in the beginning. But the thing that I learned about using the gel press is to just go with the flow. Like I am just wiping off the ink on the side there from the brayer, and I actually really liked the way that ended up looking. So I'm just layer upon layer upon layer of different things, and you'll see me do more of that at the end of the video as well. So stay tuned for that. The other thing you can do with a gel press is use acrylic paint. So in this portion, I'm using the Tim Holtz Distress Paint. I have salvaged patina there, and you can see I am always keeping a piece of paper on the side to use my brayer and wipe off anything that I don't want anymore on the brayer. So now I'm adding some squeezed lemonade in just little spots. Don't always go side to side. You can go up and down as well and create kind of this abstract art background. These are so much fun to make. I am so clean and simple and linear all the time that this was just a ton of fun. So if you are also like me and you don't necessarily usually get messy, I would recommend just trying it. The gel press is not very expensive. Look at how fun that is. Even with the line in the middle, I still love that background. And you can do more layers. You can add more in. That's the thing. If you don't love the first print, just add some more paint and then swipe it down and just keep adding layers, especially with distress paints. You can go on top of each other. They don't always blend together. You're adding layer on top of layer on top of layer. So check this one out. I added just little bits of the squeezed lemonade, kind of brayered out into little spots, and then made the print on top of what I was already working on. So here I am using Twisted Citron, and I'm going to lay a bunch of that down as well, brayer it out just to get it a little smoother and blended. I'm going along the whole gel press right now to create a complete coverage. And then I'm using one of Catherine Pooler's background stamps right on that acrylic paint. So it's the same process we did before. I can stamp that off on a piece of paper, which is what I'm doing on the right hand side right now. Just press it down and you'll get that impression, and then put a piece of paper down here and you'll get the reverse impression on that paper. Now I am just using Neenah Solar White here, 110 pounds. I do think you want to use something that's a little heavyweight like that, just because you can add lots of layers, but you don't even have to honestly use heavyweight paper. You can use whatever you have and just trial and error and have fun with it. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm adding more color. I'm adding to that one sheet more layers. This time I'm going to try the butterfly. The other thing is you don't have to cover the entire plate in order to have fun with it. So I used just some color at the bottom here, stamped the butterfly, and then I'm just going to create some pressure on the back of this cardstock at the bottom where that butterfly is, and not really worry about the top, because you don't always have to do the whole plate. And you can see that little ghost of an outline of a butterfly there. All right, so I cleaned my plate off a little bit. I'm starting again with squeezed lemonade. I just love the way that the paint sticks to it. I think the acrylic paint does really, really well on the gel press, more than the dye inks do. And now I'm going to add a different color combination. I'm going to use some Kitsch Flamingo paint and just kind of swipe them across. And again, I just love creating that kind of abstract art background right on the gel press, and then you just transfer it to some cardstock. I'm going to add in a little bit of ripe persimmon as well, a little bit of more of the Kitsch Flamingo pink, and just have some fun creating. You're creating your artwork right on the gel press, and then you're creating prints with it, and you're getting all that extra ink or paint rolled on the side with the brayer. So just always have extra pieces of paper nearby. I ended up cutting down a whole bunch of 6x6s for my prints, and then I had the excess from that 8.5 by 11 piece on the side. This is another thing you can do. You can place a stencil on top of whatever medium you've laid down on the gel press, and then use some pressure to transfer it. Now I got a little messy here, but this is where it really gets cool. Then lift up the stencil and get another print just from the cardstock to what was left on the gel press. And that I think looks really cool. Check that out. So there are so many ways. You can use stencils, you can use stamps, you can use acrylic paint, you can use dye ink. So here, and again, just pick what you have near you and keep adding more layers. You don't have to use distress paint. You can use any acrylic paints. These were just some cheap ones that I had from big box craft stores. Definitely recommend having some white around because that is fun to mix in with some colors. And I love this stencil from Tim Holtz. So then place it down and again, just use part of it. You don't have to cover the whole thing. Check that out. Just adding some dots on the side there. This is where mixed media artists get to have all the fun. And you can too, to make some really cool, unique, artistic backgrounds just by continuing to add layer after layer after layer. So I'm going to lay that stencil down. I'm going to pick up a piece that I've been working on and just pick up some of those circles of paint there on the side. Oh my gosh, see the butterfly and the circles? This is a blast. I can't even tell you how much fun I had with this, but wait until you see the technique with a different medium that I'm going to use alcohol inks after this. So continue to layer, keep everything near you so that you just layer upon layer upon layer until you like it. This one had gotten very, very green. So I added some of those white dots directly from the gel print. Oh my gosh, so much fun. All right, the other ink that you can try is Distress Oxide. Now, I think for me, oxides work really, really well on the gel plate. So I just put some squares of the Distress Oxide ink down directly on the gel press, and then I'm taking the brayer and smoothing it out. Then I'm going to place a 6x6 piece of the cardstock on top, rub it on the back, and then wait until you see how nice and smooth that Distress Oxide applies. So for me, this ink did not bead the same way that the dye inks did. Check that out. I love that. Like I kind of wanted to just frame that and put it up because it was so much fun to create and it's just some colors that I really love, but I didn't feel like there was enough yellow. So add another swipe of yellow and then just place it on part of the cardstock. You don't, like I said, always have to fill up the whole plate and then check that out. It looks like a sunset. I just love this. Gel press is so much fun to play with. And then of course, add some more white dots, add some more stamped images. You can really just continue to have fun with this. And with just a little bit of paint and a little bit of ink, I am creating a ton of very layered mixed media backgrounds. The other thing I just wanted to say is you can use colorful cardstock as well. Okay, for the alcohol ink, I am laying down alcohol inks and an alloy right on the gel press. So this is a little bit different because the alcohol ink dries very quickly, and that's okay. We're going to deal with that. And I learned this technique from the Gel Press YouTube channel. So I'm wiping off my excess on just a regular piece of cardstock, and now you get to just create here. So add in more alloy, add in more color, add in a different color if you want to. I love these alloys because to me they look like they marble, and it's not a lot of work that you need to do here. So I'm using a little bit of the brayer to move some stuff around, but really I'm kind of letting the alcohol inks just do their work, right? And the best part about it is that you have this, basically this print that you can work and work and work until you get it exactly the way you want it. So I'm going to just add in little bits of color, and then I'm using the Tim Holtz bulb to squeeze air out and move it around, move color around. This is also going to speed up dry time, which is fine. So we want this to completely dry on the plate. I know that sounds crazy, but I promise this is the coolest technique. Once it's completely dry, use a couple of drops of acrylic paint, and I'm using white here, and then completely brayer out that paint until it is a nice, fine, basically smooth background there. Don't let that dry. Lay quickly a piece of cardstock on that and add pressure everywhere. And I cannot wait to show you this. This is so much fun. So you're adding pressure. The paint is lifting up the alcohol off gel plate, and then you can peel it off on a regular piece of cardstock. So you don't have to use Yupo paper, you don't have to use anything like that, because you're moving the alcohol inks around right on the gel plate. So I'm going to do it again because it was just so much fun the first time. I had to show you. So I'm adding in more colors, different color combinations, and I prefer to use those alloys. You can use mixatives on here. You can use whatever you like to use. I'm also adding those alcohol ink pearls. I love those. They're so pretty. And to me, on Yupo paper, I usually end up creating a mess. For some reason, because you can continue to keep working it on the gel plate, I had more fun using them this way than I normally do on the alcohol ink paper. So I just kept adding layers, adding colors, moving things around. Once it's dry and I like the way it looks, I add my little droplets of acrylic paint, and then I brayer them out until they're nice and smooth across the entire gel press. And again, this is the moisture that's basically allowing you to pick up the whole print right off of the gel press. So just make sure it's nice and smooth, it's completely covered. Don't let this dry. You want to, before this dries out, you want to lay your cardstock down. And again, any cardstock will work here. This does not have to be alcohol ink cardstock because you're using the acrylic paint to pick up the image. So just a brilliant technique from the gel press folks over from their YouTube channel. I loved this technique. I had so much fun with it. Then just add lots and lots of pressure on the back and then gently peel it up, and it takes the whole image right off of the gel press. How cool is that? And I love that it's got the shine to it, but also almost a matte finish because you're not doing it on a shiny cardstock. So I just wanted to share a couple more times. Like I said, use colorful cardstock, use white cardstock, add layers, use paint, use inks and then paint, use paint and then inks. You know, there's so many things you can do with this. And it's really such an affordable supply. I will also link to a video up here in the right-hand corner with these brayers that I'm using, so you can check those out as well, because I really like them. Okay, so here are all the backgrounds that I created. I mean, I literally could not stop. I was just layering mediums, having so much fun, using different color combinations, trying different papers out. I love this. It's such a blast. So I highly recommend it. But let's turn these into cards now. I am using the sentiment from that butterfly stamp set from Catherine Pooler. You can see the butterfly in the background, so I used the sentiment and some black ink from the stamp market, and I think that's all you need. Just mat it on some blue cardstock. For this one, this I believe was the Distress Oxide ink brayered background. I am going to use the butterfly again. This time I'm going to heat emboss it. It's a large stamp, so I'm going to use the Stamper's Secret Debbie tool. That's my style, the Debbie tool, to really get a good image and good pressure. And then once I have that embossing ink down, I'm going to pour gold embossing powder on top and heat set it. And oh my goodness, gold embossing powder on that sunset background. Again, I kind of just wanted to frame this, but I decided to turn it into a card, and I will send it to someone, I promise. And it says, thinking of you. For this one, it's a bunch of, I want to say, the Distress Oxide background and then some white paint and the stencil. So I decided to use the Trinity Stamps Bold Sentiments stamp that says hello and stamp it in 3 different colors of the Stamp Market ink. The bottom one is Coral Reef, the middle one is Peach, and the top one is Citrine. So it just has that kind of ombre look to it, just like the background does. And I cut it down to 4 by 5¼ so I could mat it on some white cardstock because I felt like it just made it pop and tied it really neatly together, because I do have to have a little bit of linear when I'm doing all this messy, crafty, artsy looking stuff. For this stamp from Trinity Stamps, I decided to cut it in half. It's really meant for a slimline card, but if you stack it this way, you can use it on a horizontal A2 card, and that's what I wanted to do. It says, "You are amazing." So I really love this alcohol ink background. You see on the bottom there, I added some of the paint over the stencil. So it's just a mix of so much fun. So I thought I would white heat emboss this sentiment on top And that is pretty much it. I am going to layer it on some glitter paper at the end. So I'm just pouring that white heat embossing powder right on top of the embossing ink. Make sure you use anti-static on this, because with all of the inks and mediums, you may have something that hasn't fully dried and you don't want your white powder sticking to something that you don't want it sticking to. Then I heat set that sentiment, and like I said, I just glued it to some glitter cardstock and I used a large acrylic block to hold it in place with liquid glue while it was drying. For this card, I am going to draw a pencil line around this panel die, because what I want to do is stamp this butterfly kind of off the edge there. So I'm using my original Misty. I don't have to use any corners because I'm stamping kind of in the center of that paper. I'm using the pencil lines to figure out where I'm going to place the die after I stamp the butterfly on it. So I replaced the die inside my pencil lines, used some purple tape to hold it in place, and then run it through my die cut machine. And I decided that using the whole panel was covering up too much of the fun that I had. So I trimmed it down quite a bit, actually. I was gonna just trim it that much, and then I really figured I would use it more like an angle or an arrow. And I'm using tape runner on the back of that just to adhere it down, because this panel, even though it's got ink and paint on it, it actually uses the tape runner, sticks with it very, very well. Then I decided to add back in the little triangles that had fallen out of the pattern of the butterfly so you could really see it. And then I used a supporting sentiment stamp set from Trinity Stamps to stamp "You Make Me Smile" with cobalt ink from the stamp market. And I just, again, had so much fun creating these backgrounds. If you haven't tried a gel press yet, I do highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun and they're not that expensive. If you don't have a gel press yet, but you want to use Brayers to have kind of mixed media fun, check out this video over here. As always, I want to thank you so much for stopping by and spending time with me. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you again soon. I'll be sure to learn. Okay. It's fine. Now I don't even know which word I'm supposed to say.